One very simple and easiest way to understand if an organization is mature when it comes to thinking about AI is if you go and ask any of their employees at any level and ask them, what problem are you solving with AI, or what opportunity area are you creating with AI? If they are able to answer that question, the company is doing really well, or the organization is doing really well when introducing AI to their employees. And if most of them, they say either they don't know or they say speed or I'm doing things faster, I would question that, because AI is not just to make things faster. And as I said, bad processes plus AI is, faster bad outcomes. So we just don't want things to be fast.
Welcome to this episode of What If with Leslie Grandy. What happens to human-centered design when AI can synthesize research in seconds and accelerate data-driven decision-making? On the surface, it looks like an upgrade. Faster insights, broader inputs, the ability to generate personas, analyze markets, and test ideas at a scale that used to take months. But underneath that acceleration is the most important question. If AI can simulate understanding, what happens to the discipline of actually seeking it? Human-centered design was never just about gathering data. It was about investigation, watching sometimes irrational behavior, seeing the difference between what people say and what they really do under different circumstances. It requires sitting in ambiguity long enough to realize the problem you thought you were solving isn't the real problem at all. It also requires an openness to learning, patience, and a willingness to question what seems obvious. But those are precisely the behaviors that speed compresses and organizations don't always make time for. AI squeezes the space for exploration by design, but efficiency isn't the same as insight, and AI can't accurately predict human behavior or emotions in different contexts, cultures, or communities. This is what makes the conversation in this episode with Prapti Jha especially relevant. She marries human-centered design with a method for AI-augmented decision-making, and in the process, she guides organizations to reimagine AI as a partner, not just a tool. She describes an AI maturity gap between companies that use AI to move faster and those that use it to think better. That distinction aligns perfectly with my AI engagement pyramid, which has been front and center on the homepage of my website. At the lower levels, AI is a tool. It helps automate tasks, generate code, synthesize research, find patterns, and accelerate workflows. This is where AI can serve existing models of human-centered design, making familiar processes more efficient. The higher levels of the pyramid require something different from our machine partners. When AI becomes a collaborator, it helps challenge assumptions, surface contradictions, and expand the range of possibilities being considered. This is where critical thinking, judgment, and curiosity come back into focus, not as soft skills, but as the core capabilities that determine whether AI is truly improving decisions or just speeding them up. And that's why it's important to both Prapti and to me that humans don't give AI the agency to homogenize our differences, nor do we allow it to fuel our addiction to speed, compressing our time to find answers versus increasing our time to think. We need to protect the very complexity that human-centered design was built to uncover. Synthesized insights don't always capture context, emotion, or irrational behavior, all of which make us human. But if teams use AI to create space for deeper investigation, to handle the repeatable work so they can spend more time observing, questioning, and reframing, then human-centered design doesn't disappear. It actually becomes more powerful. And the human-AI partnership helps teams think more expansively. That shift from AI as execution to AI as expansion depends on something many companies unintentionally designed out of their cultures: the freedom to pause and question how things work, and the capacity to take intelligent risks. Because when AI can give you an answer instantly, the real advantage belongs to the teams that are willing to challenge if it's the right one. I hope you enjoy this episode. My guest today is Prapti Jha. Prapti is a design thinking and innovation consultant who leads interdisciplinary teams through rigorous research to develop strategic solutions that drive business growth. She collaborates with Fortune 500 leaders, pioneering teams, and diverse communities to bring fresh perspectives to innovation, business and product strategy, and customer experience. Prapti is co-founder of We Speak Innovation and previously served as a design thinking catalyst at Ford Motor Company, supporting a workforce of over 190,000 employees, and as a senior design strategist at Cisco. She's also served as a strategist at the Harvard University School of Public Health. Her expertise spans mobility, cybersecurity, and healthcare. I connected with Prapti after we appeared in an Informa report published by All Things Innovation. I found we have a shared perspective on the innovation mindset, what it takes to innovate in large enterprises, and the importance of treating AI as a collaborative partner rather than just using it as a tool. Welcome to the podcast, Prapti. I'm looking forward to this conversation immensely.
Thank you so much, Leslie. Really thrilled to be here and looking forward to our conversation today.
Terrific. Well, let's go back a little bit in your career and tell everyone what kind of prompted you, or what was the path that led you to become an advocate of design thinking? Because I know that's been in your DNA for a long time. And I think you've evolved how design thinking works in current enterprises. But if you kind of take us back to what drew you to that approach to innovation and problem solving?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And this question always makes me ponder a little bit on my career trajectory. So I started my career in the world of design, but in the world of traditional design, which was architecture and interior design. So I was an architect and I used to design buildings and also do interior for homes. And one of the things that I was doing a lot was, at most of the time, making things aesthetically beautiful. I loved doing it. But there was one project that I did with the government of India, and it was basically kind of designing houses for the underprivileged part of the society. And that was the moment that led me actually get onto the grounds and talk to people, what is really important from them, how housing really shapes and what meaning does it have. And that was a flip of switch when I was like, wow, design can be much more than what it just looks. That's a part of it. But how can we use design to really understand behavior, understand people, and create something that's not out there? And that brought me to really into the world of human-centered design or design thinking. And there are multiple terms that you would hear whenever someone talks about design thinking. But at the core of it is really understanding a problem and solving for that problem. And that got me excited. So initially started doing all those things and slowly transitioned into the business world with innovation teams where you, again, bring the same skill sets and mindsets of getting to the core of the problem, understanding that, and then creating solutions for your stakeholders, for your customers, and for society as a whole. So that was my trajectory from traditional architecture to, corporate innovation, and now as an innovation coach.
Well, you've worked across a lot of different industries and very large companies. And I'm wondering, from your experience, do you see the innovation challenge as fundamentally the same everywhere? Or does the context really change how people approach innovation, and therefore your work with them has to change because of that context?
That is a great question. Whenever it comes to innovation, the way I love to think about is how mature is an organization when it comes to thinking about innovation and really imbibing innovation at its core. To your question, I think I would say there is a lot of similarity depending on how large the organization is and how long the organization has existed. So let's say it's a 100-year-old automotive company, and let's say it's a 100-year-old academic institution. Interestingly, the challenges that I would kind of work with or help people navigate would be very similar, which is at times we feel like that won't be the case, right? It's an education institution. They talk about very different things. It's an automotive company, very different problems. But at the core, we are all humans trying to work with other humans. And there are systems and structures of organization that have been put in place initially for efficiency and speed. And now kind of they become the challenges and bottleneck and barriers to innovation. So that's how I see innovation being similar at organizations of similar scale and timeline. And organizations are much more faster and agile depending on their size, if they are smaller or if they're pretty recent. So some organizations who are like 10, 20 years old, but they have grown really fast, they still have that agility and innovation mindset or thinking from a different perspective still intact, which takes a toll in eventually. But like that's what I would say is the similar experience I've had with different types of organizations.
Well, I'm sure you've seen this too, because I've worked at large companies that wanted to respond to the pressure to innovate by standing up an innovation lab. And they sequester people into this place where they're supposed to come up with patents or ideas or some mandate to disrupt something, but over here in a walled garden kind of way, where it isn't disrupting the status quo of the business. Which, of course, the longer the company's been around, the more entrenched that status quo thinking is. You've seen this, I'm sure, yourself in organizations. I'd love your honest assessment about innovation labs. Can they work? When do they work? What does it take for them to work? Because my own experience has been that segregation is the moat that keeps them from working.
Absolutely. And I 100% agree to that. There is one perspective the two perspectives that comes whenever it comes to innovation lab. The one school of thought is that you have to protect the innovation lab so that the other processes, systems, and mindset that are in the larger organization, that doesn't get trickled into it, right? And that's why they create a segregation. The innovation lab is the fun, happy, cool place to be. Everyone is excited. There are, freebies and a lot of things that is borrowed at times from the Silicon Valley. So that's one school of thought. The other is that let's kind of start creating new projects and new types of innovation challenges inside the organization that we already have. The challenge that has is that most of the time adds extra layer of work on top of what they're already doing. So both of them, I feel, has their own challenges. It's like, how do you actually create a system that works best in the type of organization that you are leading? So I also, first and foremost, I feel like one field book or something that doesn't work for all the organization. You have to look at your organization, your culture, and then create something. If you would ask me what is my preference or what would be my recommendation, I personally have seen more organizations or innovation labs that are kept separate from the organization, not succeed in the long run. Maybe they do some great, they come up with great outputs and outcomes in a short duration of time. Everyone gets hyped up and it's great. But in the long term, somehow it doesn't tend to, just stay there or become a part of the larger organization. So what I've seen succeed more often is actually embedding those kind of people. I love to use the word innovation catalyst. So you can use another terms, but folks who have that innovation mindset, those type of people, embed them throughout the organization very strategically so that they can bring that thinking and create projects inside organization that are their own project. They are not separate, innovation project or something like that. And that's where slowly the organization culture, behavior shifts, and then the whole organization becomes more innovative. And then you don't need an innovation lab as such. And if you do, then eventually you create a group of people come together and they work in tandem with a larger organization. Because we don't want, there is also a psychological aspect of the larger organization feeling they have been left alone. And some new folks are in here trying to tell them what to do to be more innovative. So that's a very simple psychological thing that really affects and makes a lot of innovation labs unsuccessful, unfortunately.
100% agree. I love your recommendation, but I kind of want to double down on the why innovation labs fail for a moment, because from my perspective, I've never seen a company I've worked at who stood them up include people from finance or ops, and right, they're the creators, not the doers. And so those people get sort of a different class of experience. And yet sometimes the way you actually innovate might be in a business model or in a legal contract, a kind of relationship that hasn't existed previously. And those people may also have insights around what others in their field are doing that don't get tapped at that moment, right, of creation. And so in some ways, I think they fail because they become narrower in that way, in the way that they solve problems. Have you seen it work where there have been more traditional roles included in the innovation? And I think your suggestion kind of presupposes that these people are planted in all parts of the organization. But have you seen it work where innovation might come from one of those roles we wouldn't typically think of as a creator?
Absolutely. And 100%, that is on point what you mentioned, Leslie, because whenever you think about innovation or creativity, it kind of gets bucketed to one type of people. And that shouldn't be the case, especially now the world that we are living in, where, verticals and industries are kind of coming together. It's not like you cannot separate it. And it's going to become much more similar as we move forward with the advent of AI. One way that I have done it and I feel has been pretty successful is actually helping people see, let's say if a product comes to market or whatever offering you create as an organization, one common term people use is called journey mapping. That's one activity. But what is at the core of journey mapping? It's actually seeing end to end how your product really starts, like thinking around a new idea starts and how do you get it to market? Or for that matter, whatever your final output is. And then looking at what I really like about it is not just the customer experience part of it, but actually all the stakeholders are inside the organization that are involved in each part of that product development or creation. And that's where you will see the legal folks come in. You'll see the finance folks come in. And that's how, if you start thinking about organization and innovation projects, and that's how you start building teams, I feel like that's where real innovation happens. And a lot of people who have great ideas are also brought to the table to think differently and are also kind of equipped with the tools that we use as innovators. And they do great once they get to do that.
One of the other things, again, from my experience, that leads people to segregate these innovation labs is they want to also separate out the risk and failure component of what innovation is. And they don't want the failure to become more impactful around the enterprise. So what have you seen from organizations that are able to cope with failure versus those that sort of tolerate it rhetorically but buffet against it? Like really, again, preventing people from taking the risks that really might have greater rewards.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things is segregation. So for example, folks who are working with, let's say there is one product that is your cash cow, or like that's the product that's making money. And of course it's doing great, but eventually that might also be disrupted with all the new products or companies that are coming out. So a biggest mistake that I see is companies keeping their biggest revenue generating or profit generating product or service intact as they were doing it. And then they're just coming up with different products or different things with different set of people. I feel like that's the biggest place that separates one company from the other, where it's like, even if the product is doing great and is at its height of success right now, that means you have to really gear up because it's at its pinnacle of success, and you have to start kind of already, innovating and disrupting yourself. Some companies do it really well when they kind of disrupt their own product and come up with something new before someone else does it. And that kind of really separates them from a lot of big organizations that, couldn't survive the disruption that came from very small startups at that time. So that would be one way of kind of thinking about how to really work in this innovation space and keep innovating and bring all the organization, different types of product teams together rather than just thinking about one innovation lab. One way is portfolio planning, I would say. So when we do portfolio planning, we mostly think of portfolio planning on a company level. It's like, okay, these are my products. These are the things that we are working on. This is how we're mapping the portfolio. One thing that I have seen successfully being done and been part of is actually as a vertical or a part of an organization or a team, map your portfolio. So that's how you have some risky bets that you're working on, your team is working on, some bets that you would be successful, and then, different types of things. So you also have to talk to your investors, your stakeholders, or other people when it comes to, return on investment that you are doing. So that really helps balance out a lot of risks that might be associated with innovation. And that helps with distributed innovation because then every team knows that they're working not just 0 to 1, but 1 to 10, they have this distributed portfolio. So thinking from a portfolio perspective at a team level or a vertical level is something that I've seen be really successful.
I've been following you on LinkedIn. I've really appreciated your perspective and insights. And one of the things you said recently that I really would love for you to expand upon is the hardest skills in the age of AI are the ones we used to call soft. So expand upon that for the people who might not have seen your post. And also, what is it that you find when you walk into an enterprise that's struggling with soft skills? How do you sort of encourage the development of those?
Yes, that post, it resonated a lot with a lot of people, both individuals and organization. It is easy to kind of understand it and kind of try and imbibe it. If you are as an individual, it's like, okay, because soft skills are important now, I would start working on my soft skill, not just hard skills. And there is a lot of research coming out that is talking about how soft skills like creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, all these are kind of much more important than a lot of hard skills that we all were going school for, or putting in many hours to learn, because, in the age of AI, a lot of things AI has just automated and do it for you. So the critical thinking, reasoning becomes really important. And those were initially or earlier bucketed as soft skills, which used to come later than hard skills. So that is what I'm nudging people to think about, is like, maybe it's time that we stop saying those things as soft skills, and they are the human skills that we need at this point. And in the world of AI, what are those human skills? Let's think about it much more. On a kind of slightly digressing, but I do want to put it here, is I was a part of a AI panel and a conversation that was happening. And one of the panelists put it really well, that it's so interesting that AI and the machines are helping us think what it really means to be human. And what are the skill set we as humans bring to the table. And those, I argue, are the soft skills or the human skills that are more important. When it comes to organizations, I think the best way to put it is, what I personally love to put it is, the organizations that are going to thrive in the coming times are the organizations that are really good at thinking, or thinking organizations. Again, what I mean by that is, we just cannot, with AI, it's not just a capability challenge. It's not that you can build a digital, or do some digital transformation and create that capability. It's in fact a meaning and system redesign challenge. Why I say that is because organizations are not going to look the same as they are today. They won't have the same type of functions, teams, because they were all based on how the earlier world used to function, which was a lot based on information that we gathered, stored, and used again. Now information is everywhere. We have to think about, are we questioning right? Are we solving for the right thing? So how decisions are made, how uncertainty is handled, and how human and machines collaborate meaningfully. And for that, all from the leadership, top leadership, to the individual contributor, everyone has to be a learner and a thinker. These are the two core capabilities that we need. And that's what's making an organization a learning and a thinking organization. So that's how I put it. And also, like, just helping organizations think that you have to ask the right question. Your employees, your people have to be in a curiosity mindset. Are they right now today? Most of the time it's not, because people are working on their day-to-day thing, kind of getting the answers. So I think that's the conversation I'm having with most of the organization these days.
Yeah, so this is so rich. I'm gonna come back and loop back to a couple things you said separately. So we'll go down a couple of little thought trails that you've opened up for us to talk about. The first one I want to talk about that I think you touched upon is there's an organizational bias towards answers and speed, and Agile was a real propellant of that, right? Like people propelled the belief that you could get stuff done faster, make decisions faster, and deliver for customers faster, and all that was goodness. And now AI is just pouring gasoline on that fire, because you get even more answers faster and more done and more code, and speed still is really important. But in my experience, that's actually compressing the capacity for people to explore options or imagine possibilities, because there's just this appetite for it. So I've heard you say people need to ask better questions, and that better questions are the new answers. And what I wonder about that, not that I disagree at all, I agree completely, but what I wonder about that is how organizations have really trained people not to question. And this kind of goes back to what you said in the beginning about these 100-year-old companies that work a certain way and don't really want to entertain someone questioning how things were done or whether there's a better way to do something, or whether this is a risk that's really going to be required that we take in order to continue to compete. And so people stop asking those questions. And so now we have this gravitational pull towards compressed thinking. You're listening to What If with Leslie Grandy. If you want to activate your imagination and build your creative muscles, I've put together some free resources, including webinars, downloadable content, bonus book content, and even a GPT to help you achieve your goals. Access these free tools to start asking what if today at lesliegrandy.com/resources. How do you, when you come into an organization, convince people to create the space for the exploration that design thinking and innovation really demand?
Absolutely. And there are multiple layers to it, Leslie. Some of those I would touch on it, but first of all, I think it 100% depends on looking inward towards your organization is, which are the areas you have been, there's still some curiosity and questioning left because there are some teams that are doing it. Some teams are just totally on autopilot doing certain things. And then there is a mix of that. There's some teams that are kind of in the middle. I think one thing that I really kind of provoke organizations with is teams that have been on autopilot and kind of generating outputs, asking them and working with them is, how is AI doing? Like things that you were doing when you put it in an AI model, how is it doing? Because it is much faster. It is like 100,000 times faster. Maybe in a minute or two, it will give you the result. So there are two types of companies that I've worked with. One is where, because they don't have space, they have never provided, they never got an opportunity to have that space of curiosity and that psychological safety to say, this is something that's not working, or AI is doing some part of my job very good. So those employees, they have some kind of hesitation, or they'll push back a little bit and say, no, it does these things well, but it is not able to do this specific thing well, They'll point out to something where AI is not good enough yet. What I say to them is, it's not good enough yet, but it's still doing 80% of your work, right? So because the organization has not provided them that with that space, they are pushing back when it comes to AI or any other new technology there. Organizations that have provided their employees with that space of safety where they can explore and they can kind of raise these questions. And that's where this is an example of actually asking good questions. I will give you an example is basically with one organization that I worked with, it was basically, they had this mandate that each employee or let's say a team, they should start working with AI and highlight things that AI is doing equally well that they were doing, and literally in a very specific point out, let's say this part of research, or let's say market research, AI is doing really well, let's say, and the areas of their work that AI is still not there and where they really need to jump in. And what they were doing with that, and we were working together, is after that, update your job description or update the description of your team or the part of the organization is, what do you do? So your identity is not connected to what part, how it was earlier, but you're constantly evolving as AI is evolving and the capability is running. So that is what makes each employee think about the work that they are doing, think about the mandate, and also think about where AI is progressing. So that makes it really interesting for organization to move in that direction and makes them a thinking organization and makes them more curious rather than trying to see how fast we can move. Because one other thing is that if you have bad processes and AI, that leads to faster bad outcomes. And we don't want that, right? So looking at those things, looking at your organization internally first, and then kind of working with AI is, I think, what has worked really well with a lot of engagement that I've had.
You've said that the AI maturity gap is cultural and not technical. What does that mean in your mind? And what is the maturity gap about?
When I say maturity gap, I would say AI, overall, how mature the organization is when they're looking at AI. And let's understand what this means. So an organization that I would personally consider immature is the organization that's looking at AI as a tool to make something faster, efficient, just that. And an organization that I would consider mature would be in the direction of, because of course things are evolving so fast, of really kind of working as you are also working in this area, working with AI as a collaborator or a thinking partner. And the capacity and ability of AI is growing each day. So that's why I feel like that's an upward going curve, and you have to work with AI to understand that. And once you do that, working with AI as a thinking partner or a collaborator, you start reimagining your own organization, your own work as an individual, to teams, to the leadership, and then overall the organizational structure overall. So I feel like that's the difference in maturity gap. And some organizations are doing it. Of course, you start with making things faster. But I would say one very simple and easiest way to understand if an organization is mature when it comes to thinking about AI is if you go and ask any of their employees at any level and ask them, what problem are you solving with AI, or what opportunity area are you creating with AI? If they are able to answer that question, the company is doing really well, or the organization is doing really well when introducing AI to their employees. And if most of them, they say either they don't know, or they say speed, or I'm doing things faster, I would question that, because AI is not just to make things faster. And as I said, bad processes plus AI is, faster bad outcomes. So we just don't want things to be fast.
Absolutely. And I think that appetite for speed is hard to undo, right? Because it's been so deeply embedded in the agile philosophy of product development. So I agree with you that faster isn't always better. One thing you also mentioned that I'm really curious about, you've got this term decision archaeology when working in AI augmented decisions, working with AI augmented decisions. What does that entail for you, and what's valuable in that? I hadn't heard that before, and I'm really curious how those two concepts, design archaeology and AI augmented decisions, work together.
When it comes to decisions, that is one of the things that all of us do at whatever levels we are in our organization. If we have to take decisions. Decision archaeology just really helps us understand what decisions we are taking and what level, and how is it going to affect it. Imagine it as a funnel going up, or a tree that is kind of branching out. You might be responsible for one part of it, or you might be responsible for the holistic part of it. And really understanding it well with your work in the center. So like if I am an employee and I understand how my decisions are going to affect what company's mandate is, or bigger vision is, that really helps me to put my work into the vision of the company. How AI helps with augmentation of that strategic decision making is it can help you in various ways. But one way, for example, that I would kind of highlight is really understanding how the work that you are doing, how it kind of connects to the larger mandate of the company, how you can question a lot of things that you are doing. And also, one of the biggest thing that AI can do is it can help you think with a contrarian friend or contrarian point of view. So when it comes to decision making, really understanding or getting into that mindset of why it might fail, AI helps with that. And there are multiple ways that AI can do that. So these are the areas where you embed AI to kind of make that decision, and then you see it from an multiple level perspective. That is where it really kind of also gets the overall organizational hierarchy down. So as we see, we are getting rid of a lot of companies are getting rid of a lot of middle management, and that's where the AI helping with strategic decision making is a reason, because a lot of things you can work with AI to understand the decision archaeology and come out with a better outcome. So that's one part of it. There is much more to unpack there when it comes to getting into the decision-making aspect itself when it comes to AI. But that's where I will leave it with, there's a lot of potential when it comes to working with AI and making your decision foolproof.
It makes a natural curve back to the question I want to wrap up with, which is, we talked about your design thinking background and human-centered design. How does the presence of AI change the practice of human-centered design? And is it obvious to people in enterprises how the two go together as part of that sort of innovation cycle?
That is a great question. My shortest answer to that is yes and no both, if people know. One part that we are seeing when it comes to human-centered design and AI is in human-centered design, doing research. And when I say research, on ground, actually talking to people, embedding yourselves into their lives, is a very important part of it, because that's how you know the product that you're creating is actually something that people need, and not just a great technology that is out there. You're taking it and building a product out of it and putting it into the market. So kind of human-centered design wants you to start with the humans. One extreme end that AI has taken this human-centered research to is there are a lot of offerings out there where they would create multiple human-like but AI bots or people that they are just AI personas out there, and you can hire, like, let's say, thousands of them, and they'll create it based on the type of people that exist. You can put a survey question into that system, and it will generate kind of research for you. And these offerings or these companies are kind of betting on the fact that we have such robust personas, human personas, that if you do these things, you will get human-centered research and insights out of this. So that is one spectrum where AI is pushing human-centered design or research to, which I am cautious about because...
Okay, I was going to ask you. You described it so smoothly and beautifully. It begged the question, I wonder what she thinks about that approach.
No, absolutely not. But a lot of people are kind of jumping on it because it's cheaper, it's much more faster. But what I feel it basically loses the core of it is that when you have a conversation with a real human, that doesn't need, you're not putting a survey out for 1,000 people, because putting a survey out is different, and actually taking 30 minutes, 45 minutes and talking to a human, let's say in their own context of their home or whatever, or their car, it has a totally different value to it. And that is something that these AI replicated personas cannot replicate, right? So that's one spectrum. And I'm cautious about it. I would ask everyone to be, think twice before you jump into that. The other aspect where I feel AI is really helping in positive ways is when it comes to human-centered design is, yes, when you do human-centered design, innovation or design thinking, these are all innovation with design thinking. There is still, you have to do some market research. You still have to do some competitive benchmarks. You have to understand your competitors. That kind of research, AI makes it really fast. We also call it secondary research, which is that the information that is already out there, the papers that have already been published. So if you do it well and you know how to prompt right so that you know that the AI model is not hallucinating, that is where you can actually make your process much more faster so that you can use that time to actually do the real human-centered research that you maybe earlier didn't have enough time to do. So that's where in some part of research that is being augmented by AI is wonderful. The second area that is really great is, and it's not just in human-centered design, but because we used to create very low fidelity prototyping or early prototyping is a mindset that is really encouraged in the world of design thinking. So that is also something that has been really accelerated with AI, with multiple types of application that we have out there. So that is something where you can actually put something that looks real in front of someone and ask for their feedback. It won't take you millions of dollars or a lot of time. So these are the two areas where I feel it's adding positively to what companies are doing on how fast they are moving fast with intention. And that is actually helpful. The other area, the first option that I mentioned was again, it's also moving fast, but maybe not in the best way that I would agree to.
I want to underscore that the two things I think that I heard, or maybe I just filtered to hear them. One is, I think that extreme persona approach is not ethnographic. And what you're recommending is that ethnography, right? Seeing someone in their element, seeing someone under pressure, right? Seeing context, right? So I think that ethnographic research is really eye-opening. And obviously, when you've got a static data-driven persona, you're not actually seeing them under various conditions operating, and would they make the same choice under those? So I think that one piece I want to kind of underscore that you said, because I fully agree with that. The other part of it too, and I think this is the part that I always struggle with the word human and AI together in my own thinking and work, is humans are irrational and they're emotional. And I don't know how you capture that in a data-driven persona. I don't know how you effectively say, the thing I reacted to on paper is how I will actually experience it emotionally if it happened in real life, right? And how many times we've thought people will absolutely do X, and barely half of what you think of what should do X does it, right? And so you think, where did we go wrong? And I think those elements are where AI is probably the flattest, right? Is it really predicting the irrationality of human behavior?
Absolutely. And one very, an example that is often quoted in human-centered design world, and because it's the simplest way, is if you ask someone, do you eat healthy? Just ask it as a survey question. I think most of the people would say yes, because they do want to eat healthy. Like they're not lying. That's what they would say. Rather, if I have to see if someone or a group of, let's say a community has access to healthy food, if you go to their home, open their refrigerator and see what's in there, that's when you would know that if they're actually able to eat healthy or not. So that is the difference between actually doing contextual research or ethnographic research, and the other is just asking people. And with AI personas, I don't know what level it takes that to. That's even more scary. But that is the difference that you're mentioning. And this is the simplest example that we can.
Yeah, I love that example actually, because I think people don't even understand what the word healthy means.
Yes.
In comparison to what, things I know that are bad for me, or things I don't know that are bad for me that I still eat, right? So I love that example. I think that's great. Last question. What if we fast forward 5 years? How do you envision organizations will be adapting to the pace of change based on what you know today has always been a difficult exercise for companies facing transformation? What do you see to be sort of the dividing line in 5 years of those companies that will actually move past this kind of chaos of AI and actually benefit and thrive in an age of AI?
That is a great question and a hard one, because there are so many moving pieces, Leslie, we all are aware of. But at the core of it, what I feel is people inside those organizations, if they if they are able to learn how to learn in the age of AI, they are going to thrive. Why I say that, and I bring it to the simplest thing as learning. And mostly we kind of associate learning with kids or going to school. But in the age of AI, it's going to become critical, and curiosity, questioning, all those things would be a part of it. And that's why I feel learning becomes central to it, because you can never say I'm an expert or this is what I know, this is what I do. What you do would shift as an individual, what you do as a company would keep shifting. So organizations that would create learning systems for themselves, for their employees, would be the organizations that would thrive. And I would say learning systems, not performance systems, because right now we function as performance systems, right? How is the company performing? How are we performing as individuals? Of course, that would be a part of it, but we have to create learning systems. It's like, are we learning as company? Are we shifting? Are employees learning? So right now it feels like learning means learning AI. Maybe it is where you start, but that's what I would say. If I had to kind of wrap it up, I would say organizations who have learning systems, they would thrive. and not performance systems.
I love that. That's a really clean way of sort of differentiating what the evolution will require. So I think that's terrific. If people want to learn more about We Speak Innovation or about you, where would you direct them?
My LinkedIn is a great place to start. That's where I am. And also there is wespeakinnovation.com. So they can go on the website and look at some of the offerings that we have.
Terrific. It's been such a pleasure to have this conversation with you. I really feel energized, and it's exciting to have someone who's a kindred spirit around innovation and AI as a thought partner. So thanks so much for joining me today, Prapti.
Thank you so much, Leslie. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to What If with Leslie Grandy. If you're interested in learning more about creative leadership, or you're just looking for a way to build your creative self-confidence and agency, check out my book, Creative Velocity, at lesliegrandy.com/book, and start turning your ideas into action.